Okay.
Okay.
Chris, Joe, and Erica, hopefully you can hear us.
I can hear you.
Great. Thank you.
I hear you.
Erica's on mute.
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
Perfect. I do think we were expecting Rich Michael on Zoom, so. There we go.
Is there somebody else we were expecting in person? Is that Bob?
Bob was going to be absent, but we were expecting Nate.
We can start.
Yes, we have a
Okay.
quorum, so we're good.
Okay, all right. The City of Bowling Green Planning Commission meeting for May of 2021 will come to order. Jamie, please call the roll.
Mr. Earhart,
Here.
Mr. Betts,
Here.
Ms. Ennis,
Here.
Mr. McComber, Mr. Michael, Mr. Michael,
Here.
Mr. Joe Phillips,
Here.
Mr. Chris Phillips,
Here.
Ms. Sleek,
Here.
and Mr. Spittler.
Okay, we've all been given a copy of the minutes from last month. Does anybody have any corrections or revisions they would like to request? Okay, we have none in the chamber. Anybody at home have any corrections they want to submit?
No.
No.
Okay, seeing none, the minutes are approved as read, which brings us to lobby visitation for this evening. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, everyone,
Good evening.
both here and in Zoom world. As you are all well aware, the city has a great number of boards and commissions, and we rely upon citizens like yourself to serve on these commissions. Of course, we are grateful for the service of each and every one of you who choose to dedicate your time to serve on these very important boards and commissions. Occasionally, we have a resident whose service rises to the level where they reach the term limits that are created by the city charter. This evening, it's my pleasure really to recognize one of the members of this this board who has, or commission, who has reached that level. Rich Michael is being term limited at the end of this, or at the end of this meeting in May. So I wanted to recognize Mr. Michael's service by presenting him a certificate of appreciation. If you don't mind, if you'll, I'd like to just go ahead and take a couple of minutes and read it because I think it's important.
Sure.
Whereas Mr. Richard Michael faithfully served the city of Bowling Green as a well-respected member of the Planning Commission from June 1st, 2009 until May 31st, 2021. During that time, Mr. Michael distinguished himself by consistently demonstrating sound judgment, thoughtful deliberation, thorough preparation, and unselfish devotion to the public interest. He worked diligently to improve and enhance the Bowling Green community, thereby earning the appreciation of city officials and the public at large. Now, therefore, I, Mike Osbacher, Mayor of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio, in recognition and acknowledgement of Mr. Michael's impressive civic record, do hereby thank and commend him for his loyal, willing, and dedicated service to this municipality, and award him with gratitude the certificate of appreciation on behalf of all of the citizens of Bowling Green. Rich, I wish you were here. I could at least fist bump you. Thank you for your service, but we will most certainly make sure that we get this certificate to you. So thank you very much for your service, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Rich.
Yep.
You'll be missed. Is there anybody else at this time who wishes to come forward and speak with Planning Commission tonight about anything other than our public hearing, which is next on the agenda? Anybody at all tonight? All right, seeing no takers, we will close lobby visitation and move to our public hearing, which is a rezoning request for approximately 2.97 plus or minus acres on East Wooster Street located between 1616 and 1630 East Wooster Street, identified as parcel number B07-511-200-301-004510 from B2 General Commercial to S2 Planned Commercial, and Bowling Green Lodge LLC is the applicant. So we will begin, as always, with our staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. You don't mind putting the map up there, Max? So in this staff report, and I do have extra copies if anybody wants one up here at the desk, we'll be happy to get you a copy of our agenda with the staff report. As the chairman stated, this is a rezoning request for 2.973 plus or minus acres. It's basically between Greenwood Center on East Wooster Street and the new Home 2 Suites. It's currently zoned B2 General Commercial, and the applicant is requesting S-2 Planned Commercial. In your packet, we give you an aerial view of the property, same as the screen with the current surrounding zoning classifications. The application is the applicant Jamal Garmo. He's the sole member of the Bowling Green Lodge LLC. He granted authority to RCM Architects to act as the agent on behalf of Bowling Green Lodge. All the procedural requirements for the hearing have been met under section 150.111 of the codified ordinances. There's posted signage on the property announcing the request. A publication was ran in the newspaper about the public hearing, and letters were mailed to the adjoining property owners. We did not receive any response from any of the letters that were sent, at least in the office, or any phone calls. In your packet, we have the existing zoning classification of B2 General Commercial. You can see it's a pretty broad category of commercial that allows several uses. And then we give you a copy of what the proposed S2 Plan Commercial allows, which does include multifamily dwellings and commercial. We also share with you the process. So special districts are literally special. They do require site plan approval by the Planning Commission. So that is different from the normal B2 zoning, which it is zoned now. Under section 150.16, the bulk and density regulations, we do a comparison of the current zoning of B2 and we compare that to S2. So you'll see the key difference is allowing the residential under S2. There are the same 25-foot front yard setbacks. There actually is no setback for the side yard in B2. There is 10 feet in S2. The rear yard setback is the same, and there is a difference with the height. 60-foot maximum B2 compared to you can actually exceed 60 foot in height if you do increase the setbacks. Currently, there's no maximum lot coverage for B2, but there's a 40% maximum lot coverage for S-2. And special districts are also different because Planning Commission can basically waive setback screening or the bulk and density requirements. So it's a little different than needing a zoning board of appeals variance. As far as the proposed use, the application indicated that the owner would like to develop a 5-story mixed-use development along with the required parking. First floor of the building would be commercial, retail, or office space for multiple tenants. The remaining floors would be apartments. A conceptual plan was attached to the application called Bowling Green Center Master Site Plan. It actually showed a total of 2 new buildings, both labeled as apartments with a shopping center. As far as public improvements, there are public utilities available. There's an 8-inch water line available on the south side of East Wooster Street. An 8-inch sanitary sewer is available on the south side of East Wooster Street, along with the 48-inch storm sewer on the south side of East Wooster, and a 21-inch storm sewer on the west side of the parcel. And electric is available on the west, and there is public sidewalk in existence already. As far as traffic goes, when Home 2 was originally developed, the city worked with them to really centralize their entry drive, knowing that in the future the parcels next door would be developed. So as far as that goes, it's pretty much going to likely remain the same, but we still would require a traffic study or access request study as part of any new development. As far as adjacent zoning, to the west is zone B2 commercial, again, which is the Greenwood Center and their parking. To the north is S3 Plan Institutional, which is essentially BGSU property. To the east is B2 commercial, which is Speedway, and R3 multiple family residential, moderate density apartments. And to the south is R3 multiple family residential, moderate density, which is essentially stadium view apartments, and then parking for Greenwood. So as far as the staff report, we looked at several planning documents that, of course, I think many of you are well aware of, being the Planning Commission. So without reading every detail, we point to each of the plans, provide their recommendations, and then really try to align them with this request. So this looks a little different because this is the first project we really have that really centralizes on East Wooster Street. Well, as you're well aware, East Wooster Street has been a focal point for the city for several years, really trying to increase the image and aesthetics of East Wooster. And that really started with the future land use plan and then subsequent planning documents. So we added a section this time because, again, we wanted to focus on the East Wooster planning documents. So we do our typical section 1, the future land use plan. We look at the principles and we look at how that compares to the project. So we all remember the future land use plan is really clear about the importance of East Wooster Street, downtown, and older neighborhoods, and really facilitating the stabilization of those neighborhoods and improving that. The downtown really is a crown jewel of the city. So it was really careful to say that any decision the city makes may impact our downtown. So that's always been, with our decisions, the back of our mind, that we have to really be critical on that and really have that as a focal point. So in looking at the principles, this project does meet some of the principles. It can be very subjective to say yes or no. I mean, some could say it meets the principles now as B2 commercial. So, but we did go through each of those and see if it compares to the principles and if it meets those principles for current residents and future residents. And then we look at each plan component. So we look at the northeast sub-area, the southeast sub-area neighborhoods, and those areas are within the plan that they really focus on having more multifamily there. That was a big deal there, to really try to have those in certain streets and areas that make sense. Again, downtown is really important. East Wooster Street and downtown are critical focal points of the city. So the city, again, wants to be cautious about making an impact on downtown. Under East Wooster Street, the main goals within the land use plan was creating positive first impressions, harness local flavor and character, and encourage health and fitness. On East Wooster Street, page 43 of the plan, we focus on a recommendation of a design study. And that design study led to the East Wooster corridor, or concept plan, we call it. And that was in 2015. So we'll talk about that in the next section. We also include the proposed land use map. It does have this area as intensive mixed use residential and retail pedestrian oriented. And later sections of this report, though, again, we'll dive deeper into the additional East Wooster reports that came out of that concept or corridor plan. So under section 2, the East Wooster concept plan that the city did share in the cost of doing that in 2015. I give you each website of where you can link and read the plan for yourself. But what East Wooster concept plan did was really study East Wooster Street, and it broke it down into 3 zones. So zone 1 was considered the transitional business downtown zone, which was Main Street and basically to Thurston Manville. Zone 2 was the university zone, so Thurston Manville to Mercer Road. And then zone 3 was the highway commercial zone, which is Mercer and then to Dunbridge Road. And I included that diagram from the East Wooster corridor report. So zone 3 was clearly labeled as highway commercial. It did not make any recommendation to change that. They wanted better control over signage, screening standards, maximum lot coverage, maximum number of parking spaces. Again, it's about increasing the aesthetics of East Wooster Street. Also, according to the survey that was collected as part of the East Wooster concept plan open house, residential use was supported in zone 2, but it wasn't mentioned in zone 3. So again, diagram A in your packet showed the different zones. It showed the diagram from Pogemeyer that suggests the outside of right-of-way considerations for, again, increasing maybe the zoning code, the buffering, parking, et cetera standards. Under section 3, the community action plan. So the community action plan addresses another priority of council from the future land use plan, which really was to work on northeast and southeast neighborhood improvements. So it was a true community-led effort. Again, I know many of you were involved with that, but it really meant to dive in deeper from the land use plan, looking at the northeast and those sub areas of neighborhoods. So again, we give you a link to the plan. The CAP does focus on key locations for higher density residential and mixed use. So it really does go along with the East Wooster concept plan. They looked at zone 1 and zone 2. And what became of that really was, again, mixed use within that zone 1. That was really critical. And that's really how the BG Gateway District was born, was from their recommendations to have a transformational mixed use project on Thurston and East Wooster. And so as you know, the city's trying to implement that. And I think, we're getting steps there to get closer. So again, we followed that plan as far as that transformational development, putting the zoning in place. The community action plan also recommended multifamily or higher density residential along Carter Park, Prim Elementary, and along Thurston. So areas they thought that made sense where there's school, parks, and of course the university. So we give you a copy of that preferred plan and the community action plan, where you will see the higher density residential marked. And then on the next page, you'll also see again, number 1, diagram C is where the retail mixed use in red, which is essentially the area from downtown to Thurston and Manville, where they would recommend the mixed use be. So in section 4, again, we're studying East Wooster Street further. This is a strategy for redevelopment in 2019 that the city and BGSU conducted a study together to really dive down into community action plan and see what was realistic to be able to have development. So doing a market analysis and using data. So we had a recommendation, residential would look really good in zone 2, but they wanted to study that further and see where the demand was and if we could have that happen. So again, we give you a link to that document, and then I took out copies of information I thought would be helpful in your staff report. So essentially this white paper carried the similar concepts of the East Wooster Street corridor plan and also the community action plan. But they did name the zones a little bit different, zone 1 and zone 2 and zone 3 didn't sound as, I think probably as pretty as their new names. So they called basically where the gateway is, what we call it now, they called it Midtown. And they really recommended, again, continuing that transformational development. They thought that really was realistic for this area and made sense given the location of BGSU. And of course, our downtown, that was the perfect area for mixed use. And again, that's why we have the BG gateway. Then they recommended that, quote, the zone 2 be called eds and meds. And they really thought that there could potentially be some senior housing there, again, close to the university. And then of course, building upon medical uses such as the hospital that's there now. So again, very helpful, they thought, to at least look at that and the opportunity for townhomes for young professionals along that area. So then the white paper recommends commercial to continue in the interchange area. So again, you can call it zone 3, you can call it the interchange area. But again, further in the report, they talk about how they felt that hotels, retail, and restaurants would work there. It's really an auto-oriented area, being close to I-75. And they did think that there could be a better handle on zoning there. So maybe a comprehensive plan development, a POD, something to really, again, bring down the signage, make it look a lot nicer than it does with the pylons. So I give you a copy of that. I give you a copy of their presentation where they talk about how there could be benefits of connectivity, that the circulation could be improved there. And again, maybe some gateway elements as you're leaving I-75, and it could just look a little bit nicer, a better image for both the city and university. So there was no recommendation of any residential use there or mixed uses. So again, I gave you a copy of that corridor, the Midtown eds and meds, walkable hospitality. I didn't go into that because that really wasn't related to this rezoning. And then 4, the interchange. Also, as part of the interchange, I didn't mention, they thought there was a demand of retail of an additional 100 to 150,000 square feet of retail that they thought we could support there. And then additional 100 to 150 hotel rooms they thought could also work there. So as far as the market strategy that they studied, they thought, again, that a hotel and conference center could work there, inline and standalone retail. And look at the dreaded Applebee's picture. We always joke about that, but they literally thought that some of those big box type of restaurants or even fast food could also work there. So they list Chick-fil-A, Sonic, Old Navy, et cetera. So again, in diagram F, they talk about that being really auto-oriented. And then diagram G is where they, again, kind of summarize each zone and what they could support. So in summary, and looking at all the reports, the planning documents, we felt that the request is not aligned with the recommendations of the East Wooster Concept Plan, the Community Action Plan, East Wooster Street, a Strategy for Redevelopment White Paper. All these plans recommend the area stay as highway commercial, especially given its proximity to 75. There's also a highway traffic generation. It's pretty high there to support the retail services and eateries which are permitted under the current zoning. It is also not supported in the East Wooster White Paper. More specifically, again, as I mentioned, it does They did look at the market and felt that it could handle more hotels and more retail. And again, we already said auto-centric area. The report also recommends the mixed use again be in Midtown or the Gateway District, not that far down East Wooster. So while the request may meet some of the principles of the land use plan, one would also say that new development under B2 could, along with that. However, the plan is really clear that the downtown is the jewel of the city and the image of East Wooster Street is critical. So any decisions that the city makes about East Wooster Street can impact that downtown. Allowing a saturation of mixed use elsewhere has the potential to undermine the unique draw for residents to downtown, therefore impacting its success. S2 planned commercial zoning is not directly adjacent to the site, which is often labeled as spot zoning. While there is some along 75 where the former Days Inn has been shuttered, there is very few special district zonings left, and it is actually consideration of the zoning code update to consider phasing special districts out. So in the future, we'll have to consider what that special zoning may look like. I also already pointed out that the bulk and density requirements of S2 allow for a building height that could exceed 60 foot tall. I think that's concerning because we don't really have that scale of height over there. I mean, really, the new Home 2 is one of the tallest buildings there until really you get to some of the university buildings. So it would seem out of scale if we allowed taller than 60 foot. So again, that is something that I think we should consider. And then also there's going to be a new roundabout at Campbell Hill Road, Alumni Drive in East Wooster, planned for 2023. And that's being constructed for safety improvements. It is also, part of that is really to reduce that scale, to really make it feel like a welcoming area, walkable, bikeable, and again, increasing the aesthetics. Also, there is a maximum lot coverage of 40% under S2, where B2 does not have that. And by looking at their conceptual plan, it does look like the owner wants to cover most of the property in parking or building. So just something to think about there, that it might not be the best fit for that because B2 does not have that lot coverage. Also, this section of East Wooster Street generates a very high traffic count. Some people may not know that we have almost 17,000 average daily trips. So it's a very busy area. I just think high density residential along this corridor, which already has been listed as a hot spot for vehicle accidents, can be a concern for sure. There are higher density apartments in the area, but it's really off the major road, more on Clough Street. Also, it's a different sense of life, whether it's a resident living in an apartment versus somebody stopping at a fast food place and getting back on the highway. It's just a different kind of feel right there. The closest residential use directly on East Wooster Street begins just west of State Street. So, and it's also lower density and further down the road. We do know there's Shamrock Village that's not too far from there, but it's not even directly on East Wooster. It's really hidden. It's closer to 75, but most people I think don't even realize it's there. Again, it's very close to 75. So it really is a developer's dream that we hear here in our department. It's location, location, location. And I know I've had several calls about the property and all the interest has been commercial. So I'm just speaking from experience that it seems like people are interested in the property being right on East Wooster Street. And of course their frontage. So it's very valuable. So in summary, giving the evaluation of and our reasoning in this report was really our goal to compare it to the community plans that the community has approved and our elected leaders and of course planning commission. So that's pretty much it as far as the staff report goes, but I did include site pictures as we normally do. And then we give you views of the site using pictometry. Obviously Home 2 is not shown on there yet since the newer building and these are only done every 2 years, but I just wanted to give you a sense of the site from each direction. And then again, the aerial map with the surrounding zoning. And then we included a copy of the application again. And then the related documents that they submitted as part of their application. So I'm sorry, I know that's a lot of information. I'm happy to answer questions from the Zoom friends or our members here.
Questions for Heather?
Heather, can you cover Nate Spitler? Sorry for my tardiness.
Nate, you want to talk right in your microphone if you don't mind?
Sorry for my tardiness this evening. Can you cover the S2 versus as it's currently zoned, the lot coverage you were mentioning?
Yes, so S2, there is a maximum lot coverage of 40%.
Okay.
So that includes buildings and pavement, basically impervious surfaces.
Huh.
And B2 general commercial does not have any maximum lot coverage.
I have a question, Heather. So what is the technical definition of 17,000 average daily trips? What does that really mean? What does that break down to? That's how many cars go by on 75 per day
East Wooster Street.
on East Wooster,
Mhm,
17,000
yes.
vehicles on East
And as you
Wooster.
get closer down past Mercer, it drops down quite a bit, but that's how many
Wow.
up to that point.
Wow, okay.
And that's how we, are able to get a lot of that safety funding from ODOT,
Sure.
TMACOG, projects rate high because, safety for that many vehicles is really critical.
Heather, from a process perspective, let's say that we approve this, city council approved it. Would they, the developer, then come back again with the site plan for our
Yes,
approval?
correct. Yes, under special districts, you do have to get
Okay.
site plan approval from planning commission.
So if we were to approve this, but we were approving it because for, whatever reason, maybe we had a particular vision of something that we liked. And then it came back with something that we really didn't like. We would have the chance at that point to not approve the plan.
Not necessarily. If they arrive at a plan that departmental staff approve, it meets the zoning code, it meets all other codified ordinances, you're reviewing it and you're giving the public a chance for a hearing. But really, the goal is not for you to redesign it or tell them, as long as it's within zoning, what they're able to do. I mean, you can make some recommendations, but, we just want to be real careful legally that, if they meet zoning, the city's approved it, that, you're basically having a public hearing and allowing, adjacent owners to weigh in and then your own review.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Can you help me out a little more on the concern about downtown and what this would take away from downtown? I don't fully understand.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like I have a little bit different perspective because I've sat through so many presentations with numerous consultants over the years. So maybe I didn't do a great job of explaining that. And basically their conversation has always been, the piece of pie in Bowling Green is only so big, or the pie. So, when you start adding maybe something here and you're not replacing that, there's only so much of that market to go around. And so what they've said was people really want that downtown mixed use experience. And in Bowling Green, we're lucky enough that it's still fairly affordable. You go to New York City or Austin or somewhere that's bigger and much more expensive. We get a leg up here. We're able to have that mixed use downtown feel. And the fear is that if you maybe water down downtown more, when there's more options elsewhere for mixed use or having that living up and the commercial at the bottom, that you're taking away from that uniqueness of our downtown where people tend to gravitate to.
Okay.
Anyone from home have any questions for Heather?
Rich Michael here. So they haven't really decided whether it's going to be apartments or retail, restaurant, or anything like that, right?
Well, we'll definitely be able to find out more when we move to
Right.
the applicant testimony, Rich, but yeah, right now we haven't crossed that
Right.
bridge.
And I would
Well,
just say that just because someone submits a conceptual plan, it doesn't matter, that's not really part of it. They're just showing this is our idea, what we're thinking we want to do. But, once you change the zoning, certainly they can come back with another plan that, as long as it's compliant, that we would approve. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, my concern is that's a really rough area for getting in and out. We were at El Zarapi this evening for dinner, and we always go the back way, Clough, back home, because that's a tough area to get out of, especially down by Frickers. I understand why there's a lot of accidents. That's my only concern. If there's apartments there with all these parking spots, it's just going to make a lot of more traffic trying to get out onto that road, which is really hard to do. That's just one of my concerns is all. And the height, if it's apartments. But
Heather, with the proposed roundabout, I'm trying to place it in my head. Is that going to be, are they going to only have one direction to turn though from there? Let's say they want to go to downtown from that area. Wouldn't they have to turn right, hit the roundabout and then?
Correct.
Go
They would
down.
have to go to I-75,
And then
basically those
that's if-
roundabouts and go around.
That's a few years away, but I
Right.
know, just to address that concern, I know, I think at least let's say 4 years from now. That'll be mitigated a little bit.
And that is the goal of a median, is really trying to remove those
Yeah,
additional
people turning
conflict
left.
points trying to
Yeah.
turn left.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, seeing no takers at this point, we will move on to our applicant testimony for this evening. Is there someone who wishes to come forward and, very good.
My name is Brett Geese, and I'm a landscape architect and planner with RCM Architects in Findlay. And I am here tonight representing Mr. Jamal Garmo and Bowling Green Lodge. And as Heather so eloquently stated earlier, the project is based on Mr. Garmo's 3± acre parcel located between 1616 and 1630 East Worcester Street. The proposed development includes first floor commercial commercial, office, retail uses, with floors 2 through 5 being residential, with the required parking that the zoning would require. The proposed site plan included in the packet shows 2 buildings on the site that are ± 8,000 square feet per floor, or 2 buildings of a total of 40,000 square feet each. I would ask you to not consider that to be etched in stone. We are considering all options based on the requirements that zoning would make us adhere to. He's happy to consider alternative layouts, square footage configurations, site layouts to adjust to the zoning requirements and help move the project forward. As currently zoned, it is B2. The first floor commercial, retail, restaurant, office spaces are all acceptable within that zoning classification. The proposed upper floors, which are apartment style residential uses, are not acceptable within that current zoning, which is why we're looking for a rezoning request. Excuse me. We considered a number of different options to keep it as it is currently zoned in the B2. We considered requesting the residential use be accepted as a conditional use. We considered what the merits were for residential to be approved as a non-conforming use. And we also explored the option of having the residential use approved as part of a use variance. None of those are clean options to move the project forward, which is why we're looking for the rezone. We studied a couple different zoning options available to the owner. One would be a B3 commercial or central business district. We realized this type of request would have been atypical for this portion of BG being on the outside of the central business district. This would be more applicable if we were contiguous to that central business district. And we understand that cities hold that central business district near and dear to their hearts and don't just willy-nilly give that out to anyone. We also looked at the merits of a R5 residential or university-related residential. We feel that the property fits all of the criteria outlined by the zoning, with the exception that it's not owned by BGSU. So that kind of led us to the S2 planned commercial. Again, it fits all the requirements of the B2 zoning, but it also allows for residential uses. So that's kind of the groundwork as to how we settled on the S2 planned commercial. We kind of went through the different comprehensive plans and East Worcester Street development plans and kind of highlighted some of the goals of those plans and how they would apply to this type of a project. We understand that, the goals are to create a positive first impression, to harness local flavor and character, to encourage health and fitness. Remake Worcester Street into a magnificent corridor into BG, the presence of a college town, for it to be an inviting place to visit, to attend school, to live and to work. We also understand that it needs to host fast food and fuel outlets that cater to I-75 motorists rather than a place for residents seeking dining options or students. Rather, it is a place. I'm getting tongue-tied in my own words here. Sorry about that. We're basically looking for this to be an area for students and your neighborhood to commingle as they move back and forth from the residential life into the neighborhoods and to campus. It notes that East Worcester Street is a missed opportunity for dense, more diverse commercial vibrancy, and is a missed opportunity for student housing above retail. And we feel that our project fits all of those classifications. The proposed land use identifies East Worcester Street as intensive mixed-use residential and retail and pedestrian oriented. And again, these are, depending on the site plan, these are options that start checking off those boxes of the plans as the project moves forward. Looking at the 7 principles that you as the Planning Commission look to in trying to decide a project's viability. It's a highly livable urban form that creates and preserves a community. It would be an urban building with walkable amenities, starts to reinforce the walkability of East Worcester Street. And I kind of use this term car storage. If Worcester Street is designed appropriately with mixed use and the walkability, you could park your car as a tenant of this building and not rely on it to get back and forth to class or to go to the store or to a restaurant. It's more parking or more car storage than it is parking. Positive, appealing, and first impression. It's mentioned over and over that the city needs a gateway project to define the entry from 75, and we feel this project has the potential to provide that Kickstarter or the anchor for other development along the way. Local flavor and character. Nothing says college town more than residents living above the place that they work in or dine in. This project helps create that college town feel from the passing interstate. This will also depend on being selective with the retail tenants that are willing to work together to create that feeling. It's an opportunity for a number of businesses to give that local fleet feel when the tenants are not in class. They could serve as the part-time employees in these businesses. We would like to try to reduce parking for the first floor tenants to try to encourage walking back and forth from their house to their place of work or shopping. This does provide a number of different options for housing above the retail. We studied studio apartments up to maybe 3 or 4 or 5 bedroom units. Again, all of this is just kind of shooting from the hip, trying to see what we can do to get this to move forward. So there's some different options that we can use to kind of satisfy that broad range of housing options. Again, we mentioned this as being a gateway project from the interstate to campus. We can conceal the vehicles at the rear of the site away from the pedestrian-oriented Worcester Street corridor. Create the streetscape at a pedestrian feel. Get it at a pedestrian scale where people feel comfortable being next to a building and having that type of experience. And as far as access to health and fitness, There's bike paths already installed along East Worcester Street. We could study the development of an interior workout facility that would benefit the tenants of the building. And it helps create that urban feel that everyone has talked about before. So, you know, I just want to say on behalf of the owner, he's willing to put his best foot forward in the name of development, in the name of Bowling Green. He's shown that with the development of the Home 2 Suites next door. You know, he's looking to develop or invest a large amount of money into this site, and he's looking for some help along the way.
Questions? Anybody home?
I have a couple.
I have. Oh, go ahead.
questions. So you're trying to switch this over to the S2, which by Heather's report states that you have a 40% coverage on the property limit, correct?
Correct.
So, and looking at your, your potential plan that you guys have put forward, I mean, you're already halved, more than halved from what you guys are looking at, because you've got it set up as 100% coverage, parking spots and buildings, et cetera. Another couple of things I noticed is that the layout, you talk about having first floor commercial and then apartments above, et cetera. The layout you guys are putting in front of us is that of 2 apartment buildings that is going to happily have a couple of commercial, first floors about it. The entire thing is laid out like any other apartment complex we have in the city, where it's just 2 big blocks surrounded by a sea of blacktop and cars. You have a neighboring property that's set up as a commercial property where it's more of a strip where everybody who parks can go into the first floors and boom, 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 boom. And again, I know you guys have stated that you're willing to change what you have here, but I'm seeing a difference between what you guys are showing versus what you're stating and speaking of, is that it's the point here is the residential. Obviously it's not the commercial, because otherwise you wouldn't put 5 floors of residential on top of the commercial. And I think just based on, like Heather said, with what we're looking to do in this area of town, like a big old apartment complex is kind of outside of what we've spent 5, 6, 7 years telling us that we probably ought not do in order to take away from our downtown. So while I think what you're talking about is hitting all the major points, what you're showing us is just another apartment complex. That's my bigger concerns here.
The plan that was included in the packet was created as kind of a second phase to the hotel development next door. And I understand and appreciate your concerns about a suburban drive-up development where we're talking about a lot of different things with the urban streetscape development. So I've advised the owner to consider alternatives for that site development plan to help it move forward, and to consider pushing the building as much as they can to the front of the site to get it up onto that urban streetscape so it can be a part of that walkable community. As far as the 40% lot coverage is concerned, we understand that as one of the limitations of this proposed rezoning classification, and would have to be studied as we get farther into development, and if necessary, look at a variance along the way to help accommodate that.
Do you have any follow-up, Joe?
Well, I mean, it just seems as, backdooring a variance would be a kind of just going against the whole point of, switching the whole thing to begin with. If what it's already sitting there allows you to cover the entire thing. And again, it gets back to the obvious point being, this is more about the residential, and, which fair enough, that's where the money's at. And to talk about the walkability and this, that, and that we've set forth, and these reports. I mean, we say at the university, we don't have a parking problem, we have a walking problem. And I see that now we're going to park an apartment complex. I mean, mind you, there are some behind it, of course, but it's damn near the furthest point from the university that is anywhere near it. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm hearing you guys hit all the points that we've set forth and all this homework that we've done as a city, but it doesn't quite jive just based upon location and plan and et cetera. So again, it's just the glaring differences I see. That's all I'm going to say on it.
I have a couple of questions myself, and they're both related to the residence aspect. The first is just, given the huge commercial potential of that property out there, especially given that there's already the hotel structure in place, newly developed, why the heavy focus on the residents? And secondly, given what everybody in the world seems to be telling us, or everybody in the US seems to be telling us about the changing face of college students, what they're becoming, do they go anywhere near campus? And in light of the pandemic, it just seems like the whole focus is this is going to be student housing. And I'm wondering if you guys have some secret research that you have looked into that's guiding that decision, because to me, it seems like the exact opposite wrong direction to be going for a business model at this point in time.
My name is Richard Atto, and I work with the owner. Actually, I constructed the hotel next door. That's actually a very good question. So again, repeating what we all talked about, many of the uses that are allowed in the B2 are similar. It's as another commissioner said, it's all about the residential. That's really the main difference between the B2 and the S2. Obviously, the B2 has no maximum lot coverage, and now we have to comply with 40% maximum. So the reason, and to answer your question, is the same pandemic that may change the likelihood of more students attending has also affected how the hotels operate as well. So when the original thought was, hey, and maybe the site plan reflected a phase 2, another hotel, another brand, more rooms, more occupants, but that's gone, and it may be gone for a long time. Whereas if it's zoned properly, maybe the residential fades away in years, but maybe then there becomes a demand for more senior living or different kinds of uses that are still need to be in this type of zoning. So with the B2, you build a however many story hotel, and that's all it can ever be. So if something changes, which it's already changed, it's changed for good, we think. It'll never be back to where it was. Whereas this could be residential in the S2, or it could be residential for senior living, or maybe it could even be a small component that has senior living but offers care. And that's the whole idea, is the future of this gateway. And we could make all the things that the city stipulates, because that's a planning issue. But we could talk about the planning at another time, but we're talking about uses. And if the hotel fades away in 10 years and you can't fill it up with something else because it doesn't fit the zoning, that's the number one reason. Giving up 60% of lot coverage doesn't come easy, but you're giving it up to get something else, and that's to have the ability to have other uses that fit in this district. The last thing we want on our gateway is a vacancy and the look of what's wrong with Bowling Green. There's nobody here. There's nobody living here. Well, that what could be if it is a hotel. So the number one reason is residential, but it could be students now. It could be students and residents that want to be still stay in the city, but have different reasons for wanting to relocate it, but it also gives us flexibility. And the main thing is in the future, me and you and all the folks watching, they want it to be viable, whatever it is. And that's the number one reason.
Thank you. Any follow-ups? Any other questions from home at this point?
I have if no one's speaking up. I think if we were working with, if the owner was BGSU, we would have a sense of what to expect. If it was WeWork, we would know what to expect, right? Are there any similar developments the owner's been a part of in terms of this type of mixed-use buildings? I understand that the hotel is his, but whether there's other similar types of projects that have been done that we could point to?
Primarily, our ownership here is mostly in the hotel business, but he's seeing, because he has multiple units, he's seeing the decline in what's happened with the pandemic, and looking out in the future, there has to be a little bit of diversity. So he's actually looking into, but to point to one that's been completed of this type, I couldn't do that now. But like I said, because of the location and the attributes of Bowling Green and the university planning, we don't mind working with planning on the design, but you can't, it's hard to talk about the design when you don't have the underlying, right to the use. And it didn't have to be, maybe it didn't have to be S2, but the main, I don't want to, at the risk of repeating, but the main thing is to be able to have the right to do the residential versus strictly other commercial, which we can still do in the hotel.
Sure.
But maybe that was too long of an answer, but we don't really have another one that we could say, look what we did over here yet.
Yeah, fair enough.
But they're in the works.
I think we've got a bit of a chicken and egg problem, it sounds like, where you need the zoning to give us the plans, and you're not doing the plans until you get the zoning. I understand. I wonder whether you might consider, I don't think this has been done here in BG, or maybe it has, I haven't been around that long, some type of agreement with the city. I don't think it'd be with the planning commission, but in which you kind of spell out what you'd be committing to build. I know for us here, I'm guessing when we get to our discussion, we're going to have some enthusiasm for the idea and a lot of hesitancy about what this will actually look like in practice. That's why I was asking Heather about, do we get another bite at the apple? Is this going to come back? So I wonder whether there would be a way, and it would obviously would not be tonight in this hearing, whether there might be a way you can consider firming up those plans and doing it in a way that you could feel good about and the city could feel good about.
I don't know what the mechanism is.
Sure.
And I don't know where whether it's a council matter or outside, but I'm sure that we would like to work with the city, because let's say that we were fortunate enough to seek the rezoning and it was approved, then we want to be able to all get together and come up with something that benefits the owner, because it's obviously it has to be economically viable, but yet achieves all the goals that we want, and then looks towards the maintaining the viability towards the future. And that's, we think ahead, and I think there's a way we can do that. And again, although Heather is correct that you meet all the actual letter of the law, but still there's a lot of things that can be done at the planning commission level, even though you could say it meets it exactly, but there's always ways to work things out. I mean, I've done it in many communities. I actually still sit on a planning commission in Bloomfield Township, Michigan, and people come all the time, and we just have discussions, and maybe things get put on the table that the developer didn't even think about, and it ends up being more beneficial to them. It's happened many times in our case. And a lot of times when matters come before our board that involve rezoning, it actually involves major changes. So in other words, even the action that was here at the last meeting takes property that the city wants to do something with, and it's a whole complete change. In this case, extremely positive because it's a positive thing for the city, but that's not always the case. But in this case, the rezoning is almost resembling what it is now, except for one little use. I mean, if there was a way to allow the residential without changing the zoning, that would be simple too. But in the case of the city here, it allows you to have much less lot coverage. So I mean, you trade things off and the same thing happens when we present something to the commission. It's not, this is the way we want it, take it or leave it. I mean, you might have a suggestion that benefits us that we didn't even think of.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anybody at home? Anybody in the chamber? Okay, with that, we will move on to public testimony. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone here tonight in the chamber who wishes to come forward and raise questions or concerns or anything related to this rezoning request? Okay, seeing none, we will close public testimony, and I guess we can close our public hearing and move to our deliberation. So what is the thinking?
Yes, before we start deliberation, I just want to make clear, I'm going to participate in the discussion. Our firm in the past has, I haven't, I don't know exactly when Mr. Frazier started representing him. But in order to avoid any potential conflict, I'm not going to.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, after several of us have sat on since, I don't know what, the last 10 years, I think, on getting the city master plan written. We've spent a lot of money hiring experts to come in and talk to the public. I'm just not comfortable with all of a sudden taking a part of it out and saying, okay, now we're going to change it. There was a lot of thought and consideration put into the original plan, so I'm not comfortable changing it at this particular time.
Thoughts from anyone at home? Anybody want to share anything?
I think I'd have to concur with Ms. Ennis on this one. This property has a lot of potential, but it's not enough for us to just break with all the hard work that's been put in up to this point and changing what our intent is for the area.
Follow up on that point. I guess I don't see it quite as bad as that, but I guess my hang up, I don't know where the hang up is precisely, but how far off is this for duty, for instance? I mean, if this was, how far down the road does this work? I mean, zoning, yeah, we have our different categories and obviously zoning and the master plan, but it's all, you look at the pretty pictures in the master plan and there's very few, specific lines. Okay, you go past this street, we can't have any more of this. It's all a little fuzzy for a reason, because on the edges, there's going to be some mixing in. I have a hard time saying that it's a couple hundred feet past where we would otherwise want it. So, no, it's out of here. As opposed to, hey, this is the $5 million or whatever investment, and it's going to look pretty nice coming off that highway with everything else that's right there. There's already foot traffic. Hotels, we have big weekend football games, and a bunch of people staying at the hotel. They're walking everywhere. That's what everybody's going to be if you have residents there and they can walk everywhere. So there's a lot of positive. I get it's not perfect. May not be perfect as presented. There will have to be 40% lot. There's no getting around that. I don't know that it might be necessarily perfect, but I struggle with if we wait for everything to be perfect. I don't know when we're ever going to.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
two thoughts to, I'm sorry, Erica, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead.
Two thoughts to follow on that. I think what I'm struggling with first is the alternatives. Do I actually think like a Chick-fil-A would be better right there? It would be more consistent with the plan, but I'd rather have a mixed use building than a Chick-fil-A, or your preferred. Probably shouldn't pick Chick-fil-A of all things to pick. And second, I think that if this was BGSU asking for that university zoning with the same building, that we'd just approve it in a heartbeat. I don't think we'd give it much thought.
But
So-
the point is, though, we don't have any control over the
Right.
land that BGSU owns. So
Well,
that's an apples and oranges
Yeah.
comparison. We can't even make that comparison.
well, but I agree with you, Will. That's like the huge point here. The point is, do we want an Applebee's or do we want someone to come in and have the mixed use that we would allow the university to do? And I get that the university doesn't own this. That's probably fortunate, actually, because another outsider wants to come in and do the same thing that the university would be doing, and we would be saying yes. So, Will, I was right on that page. I don't want another Applebee's or Applebee's there. Like, this mixed use really provides a combination of residential and commercial and students. And I mean, you're right across the street from the Stroh Center. What a great place to have a mixed use building. So I agree, Will. What are our alternatives? I mean, an Applebee's, a big chain restaurant? No, I don't want to see that.
But then to immediately counter my own points, because this is what I'm struggling with, I do hesitate, and again, I'm younger and I don't understand the process as well, maybe as some others, but I'm concerned with approving this and then ending up with a project that does not look like at all what we have in our heads, right? We absolutely, certainly a couple blocks down, we want these types of mixed use buildings. This is what, all the plans agree. This is not quite the location we want. Maybe we still approve it because we're not sure about alternatives, but it does seem like I'm not clear on what type of control we actually have once we say yes. That's why I was suggesting, and this is again my ignorance and inexperience, if there's some type of arrangement that the owner developer can reach with the cities to sort of in one cohesive process, we sort of smoothly say, this is what the land use is for, this is what the project looks like, and then everybody's on the same page about what we're getting, and then we actually are choosing between our Applebee's / Chick-fil-A versus the mixed use building of our dreams, instead of the unknown future restaurant versus the unknown future building or set of buildings that we're not sure what it's going to look like. So I am struggling with this because it's certainly not a slam dunk, and we don't have the vision of what this is actually going to be.
Well, I mean, I think they proposed a vision, a start of a vision, but I kind of hammered on a bit there, and it doesn't feel like what you would want in there, again, because, and maybe it's one of those where they come back with something of a better idea, and again, outside of what we're doing right here, ours is maybe not necessarily our job per se, but again, this, what I see on the plan that they put in front of us tonight is two just boxes that aren't even laid out well enough to have commercials on the first floor without fighting with the resident parking. You know what I mean? It's there's a discontinuity between what they want to do and what they've put in front of us. That's where I'm getting hung up at. It's whether or not they can come back with something a little more apropos to what they're hearing tonight. That'd be phenomenal, but that's where I'm seeing it.
And Joe, my guess is that if we had, and this is just a guess, so y'all can jump in and tell me I'm wrong. My guess is that if we had, if those parking limitations, et cetera, weren't in the zoning they're asking for, that those plans they gave us might have looked a little bit different. And maybe that's off base, but I do think that what they gave us conformed to, the deck, the hand they were dealt, I guess.
It's based on 100% coverage of the site. So And again, what I said before was just like, okay, so if they're only allowed 40% coverage, then what they've handed us is more than twice what they're gonna actually get out of it.
Sure.
So there's that discontinuity that I'm kind of getting hung up on, you know, is it, so we changed the zoning here and then boom, now what they've given us, we're gonna have it. Okay, it's gonna be for one building plus this, that, and the other. Okay, is that really in their business plan? I mean, he already said that he's gonna probably do is once we approve this, he's gonna come back and look for a variance to build a second building with the applicable parking. So, you know, that's what we've got to think about.
For clarity, I don't
Based
think,
upon what we've been told. So
just to clarify, it'd have to be a variance in a
absolutely.
S2 because the 40% based on the pictures at least proposed. But in addition, I don't think you guys are more than welcome to come up and tell me if I'm off base here too, but I don't think it was a variance for a second building. It was maybe we'll get a variance if need be, depending on the project. Maybe I'm off on that. I'll make sure we're clear there.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Fraser, and I'm legal counsel for the owner, Jamal Garmo. Mr. Phillips, to address your point specifically, the plans that you see, the two building structures.
Just 1 second. We've actually closed the public hearing.
Okay.
We will temporarily reopen it so that you can comment, but just so you understand, that was already closed. So the
Understood.
time to speak was before. So go ahead.
No, I apologize.
It's fine. Go ahead.
I understand that the hearing was closed. I just want to comment on this situation because the plan that you guys are looking at was developed prior to the approval of the Home 2 Suites Hotel site. And so it was a phase 2 concept constructed prior to the plans that were developed for the Home 2 Hotel. What we're envisioning at this point is completely different because as we're told by planning, you can only have one building per lot. Right now we have one lot, so we cannot have two buildings. There is no intention to have two buildings at this point in time. That was a preliminary site plan evaluation for a phase 2 of the building project. So I just want to make that clear for everyone because I think there's some confusion that what was submitted with the application as a part of the proposal is the intention of the owner, and that is no longer the intention that was developed years ago before the Home 2 was even begun in terms of construction. So I apologize for interrupting. I apologize for coming into the portion of the closed meeting, but I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay. All
Are there
right.
any questions? Thank you.
Okay. With that, we will reclose the public hearing. We were at this point a few meetings ago where, it's pretty clear we've got folks who feel one way and folks who feel another. So what I would suggest is that, that's not going to change going back and forth. I think it just really comes down to someone making a motion and us taking a vote on it. And I also want to mention, of course, as always, at least with matters like this, we don't get to, we on the Planning Commission do not get to decide this. This is up to our elected officials on City Council. So we will be voting to make a recommendation to them, not that they're not going to pay attention to that, but ultimately it is their decision. So, and I do think there's been a lot of great ideas that have come out of our meeting here tonight. So would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move.
And the motion
The
is,
motion is that we grant the request for the rezoning to the B2 to a S2 planned commercial from Bowling Green Lodge.
you're moving that we actually recommend to approve that rezoning.
I am.
Okay. Is there a second?
There's no second.
Yes.
We'll die.
I'll second.
I'll second it.
Okay, so it has been properly moved and seconded that we recommend approval of the rezoning from B2 to S2 planned commercial. Jamie, please take a roll call vote.
Mr. Earhart.
Can we have discussion on the motion just briefly? Or do we have to immediately vote without commentary?
Yeah, I mean,
What kind of discussion
I-
do you
we
want?
need a
I just-
clarification on what we're.
Just clarify that. I do hope we have the opportunity to follow up with city council between now and when they consider it. But with saying that, I'll happily vote yes.
Hold on. We'll do this
Yeah.
as always with a roll call vote and will, of course.
Yeah.
any one of us is completely free to reach out directly to city council, share our opinion, a personal recommendation, whatever. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Jamie,
Mr. Earhart,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
no.
Ms. Ennis,
No,
Mr. Michael,
No.
Mr. Phillips, Mr. J. Phillips,
No.
Mr. K. Phillips,
No.
Ms. Sleek,
Yes.
Okay, well, with that, since Mr. Spittler is not participating in the vote, the motion does not pass. So we do not recommend the rezoning request from B2 to S2 to City Council. I would like to add, before we move on to the next section of our meeting here tonight, that I agree with the sentiments expressed here that I think a open and straightforward dialogue with city council members, the mayor, the city, I felt like there was some genuine eagerness to try and find a way to make this work. And for me, that's the plan. And I want to say that, I go back 8.5 years to the very first portion of this, the future land use plan. And I look at every step has gotten more refined. And I understand you guys are saying, oh, well, we're never going to get there, but we are. It's amazing to me how far we've come from 8 years ago with that plan to what's going on now. And the surest way for a plan to fail is to just throw it out the window. It's not that you can't deviate from the plan, but it must be an agreed upon deviation. And that's why I would suggest to you folks, the more you can speak with the city and elected representatives, the better the chances are that there's some grand compromise that can be made that would have this work as part of the Bowling Green land use plan development. So I highly encourage that. And thank you all, gentlemen, for your time this evening. With that, we'll move on to our reports for tonight. Judy, what can you tell us about the Zoning Board of Appeals?
well, the zoning board of appeals had their meeting last month and we had 2 requests for variances. One from Eric and Andrea Rader on Timber Ridge Drive. They wanted a variance to construct the construction of an 11-foot by 20-foot addition to the existing garage, which was going to encroach 4.5 feet into the 10-foot required setback from the sideline property to the south. And that request was granted. The second one was from a Timothy Gray. He has requested a variance to allow the construction of a 24-foot by 24-foot accessory structure, a garage, which would encroach 9 feet into the 10-foot required side setback from the side property line to the west at 126 Clay Street. And that variance was also granted. Next Wednesday, the zoning board has a lot of interesting requests for variances coming up. So I would invite you all to come and join us at a zoning board meeting.
Thank you, Judy. Heather.
I am not giving you a formal report tonight, but I did want to let you know that permits are up quite a bit this year. We've issued 139 zoning permits compared to 92 at this time last year. 13 single family housing starts this time or right now versus 9 at this time last year. So I thought that was some pretty good news here. Also wanted to give you just a quick update. Council did pass the annexation of the 18.51 acres that you had recommended approval for the expansion of Winter Garden. Also wanted to let you know they did pass a Parklet ordinance. And I thought that was critical because Jeff just mentioned, we had this land use plan for 2014 and that was one of the recommendations. So again, we're still trying to implement the big appetite that plan had. And so I just thought that'd be important, especially for Jeff and Judy, since they were involved in that so many years ago. So that's it, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions for Heather?
Thank you for all the information you provided to us, Heather. It was very well presented.
Thank you.
All right, that being the case, meeting adjourned. Rich, thank you again very much for your season. We all owe you a beer the next time we see you in public.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
Thank you.